after that brief intermission, I have rethreaded my loom, and I will be editing my other video to point out that you should leave a space on the screws between each warp thread. Turns out our beads are a little bit too wide to put them on the single spaces. Again, this is based on the aught, or the width, and how many you can fit within an inch. Ours are, I believe, 11 aught, and as such, I should have been more mindful of how much space was between. If you haven't started weaving or like putting on your warp threads yet, you can always hold up your beads to see if they'll fit between those threads, and this is for going forward as well. In my case, I didn't do that. I got ahead of myself, and so we live and we learn. So going back into this, for you guys it hasn't been very long, and for me it's been several minutes because I had to rethread. Again, I did my 11 warp threads across. I've got my 10 beads going from left to right. I've got my pattern sitting right here, and I'm going to use my ruler to block out parts of my pattern so I know where I'm at in the process. So I'm going to set it here. I'm going to put my ruler across my first line because that one is donezo. And you don't have to be super specific with this. This is just a thing for me. So using your needle, you can put it up underneath here. With these ones, now that they're a little bit more spaced out, you'll probably need to use a little bit more of your finger to actually get them in the right spots. Ooh, almost perfect. I need to get this blue one over. And there we go. So now I'm going to hold them in place because this is where they're going to stay. Oh no. Oh no. I got myself off. My little black ones on the end. Joined up. Joined hands. Okay, so I'm going to separate. There we go.
I misclicked one of my spills.
There we go. So I'm going to hold this really nice and tight, and I'm going to pull this needle through, and pull, pull, pull. Stay tight in there, you little nuggets. And pull. These little guys at the end really don't want to hang out in there, but that's okay. I'll be able to bring them back. So I want to leave about a 6-inch tail. And again, I'm going to get these guys back in their rightful warp thread spots. My warp threads are actually a little bit loose right now, and that's not helping me. Make sure your warp threads are nice and tight. There, okay, there. Yowza. So now I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going above my warp threads to go back through from right to left. So before we went under, this time we're going over.
This is not going well.
And yes. Okay, so if your beads are really loose, because they're really small compared to the space between your warp threads, you can always pull it tighter.
It sucks I checked the door right as I put it down too.
There we go. And now we're going to start on the second row. So on my second row, it starts with 1 black, 2 light blue.
Oh, we're doing operators? Okay. I mean, I can't snipe.
And then I've got 2 dark blue. Oh, I read that wrong. 1 dark blue. I'm pulling 1 dark blue off. And then I've got 2 black. 1 dark blue. 2 light blue. That one's really wide compared to the rest. And 1 black. So I should have 10 beads total. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to go underneath. I don't even have to go close to my warp threads as long as I am making sure I'm underneath. I'm going going to pull until I have a little bit less slack. And I'm going to line up these beads and push them up through their warp thread spots. If it turns out that you're having a really hard time, you can do them one at a time just like this. Just make sure that you're going over the warp threads. So I've done the first two. I'll pick up my third one here. So right now I'm actually gonna just cut out that chunk of video. I'm lining up with these warp threads. For some people it's helpful to keep the beads on the needle. For some others they like to make sure it's on their fingers. It's kind of all of your personal preference. Did I miss?
Hey, I tried.
We're coming back. I'm going to pull this a little bit further up here. This one's really being crabby.
I'm gonna push up back here.
So this time-consuming aspect, this practice needed, this patience needed, is why I'm only planning on us doing one, maybe two projects. So I'm pulling this back through. You can see I have a big old loopy loop on the end here, and I don't want that. Again, you want to make sure that you have a nice long tail. So I'm going to push this up. You can always use your needle to really straighten out your lines. And again, if you have too much space between your warp threads, you can use your excess weft thread to pull it tight, and it'll just pull them together and condense them together. As you go down your pattern, again, you can either cross off rows, you can keep track of which row you're on, you can count your rows. I am a lazy nuggie, which is why I use the ruler to just cover up the line that I just did. So it's entirely up to you.
I have one, but it only works on black games. Now I know better than to try to use on any
Broken bead in there. If you have any broken beads, those ones can just be tossed. Those do not count towards the save them and turn them back in at the end of the semester. Broken beads can go away. Okay, so again, left to right, making sure that I'm not wound up in here. So for some people, they like to keep the beads on the needle when they're lining them up with their warp threads. So this time it worked really well to keep it on that needle, and again, I'm pulling it nice and tight. Yeah. I'm going to make sure I'm above my warp threads. If you ever push through and you're pulling your beads tight at the end of a row and one falls off, that means that you went under that neighboring warp thread and just allowed the bead to come right back off. So there, I have 3 rows done. Your goal for the week is to get 10 rows done.